Good evening. We'll start with Mr. Brooks's report.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our August board meeting. Really, to me, it's the official kickoff to the school year, and we're very excited that our children are going to be coming back. Well, some of our children are already back. We've got athletes already reporting up at the high school, and certainly new students are starting to scramble around the hallways here and there, and loving to see the staff members starting to show up again and getting those classrooms ready as we finish out August and starting to wrap up our recruiting and hiring process. It's a very exciting time of summer. You know, our summer staff, administrators, custodial staff, and clerical staff have been hard at work cleaning and scrubbing and getting everything ready with orders and figuring out where all those orders go in the classrooms and getting schedules together. And it's just been a very busy but very productive and well worth it summer. So I thank our summer staff for everything they did to prepare what's coming in about a week and a half or so. So we're very excited for it. Also received the correspondence that I want to share with the board. You have a copy of it in your folders from Elizabeth Goodenough, who is one of our Board of Education reps. As a recipient of the student appointment to represent the Board of Education, she's thanking the board for making her one of the choices. So that is in your folders. Also want to congratulate the school district and certainly thank Mr. Cantone for his guidance and direction on helping us to put this together. But we were awarded a $2,000 grant from IBM, and we're very excited about that. Ms. Hecht is going to be using that money very well with our teachers and our students, and certainly Mr. Cantone, thank you very much for your support and for working with our staff and children on this. So thank you. We appreciate that. Mr. Bakatsias, would you give an update on the communication system status and where we are with the installation?
Yeah. So we have been working all summer on our new communication system, which includes the IP phone system, and then other communication integration. Unfortunately, there was about 15 to 20% of the order that was back ordered, and those ship dates were September 7th, and the other one was, I believe, the 23rd in September. A few of those pieces did arrive, however. They're called ISRs, and it is going to allow us to integrate with the system and further program the servers. Some of the things that have been going on to this point are that the ANIS reps did several district-wide walkthroughs. They talked to administrators and secretaries about the types of call groups and the features that would make the phone operate more smoothly. It does have a lot of enhanced features. So those items are being programmed together. We are going to be renumbering all the district phones. One thing that we did under our present system when we installed it is we rolled over a lot of existing numbers. So, we have a main number of 236 8000, but you'll see that the building numbers, they could be 1636, they could be all these different numbers. Right now, what ANIS is doing a different dial plan, and we're building off of, and this is something that the superintendent has asked for as well, they're building off of the 236 8000 extension, and you'll have like a 100 series, which might be central office. The 8200 series might be the high school, 8300, 8400, and so on. And then the nurse's office, for example, in each building will have the same extension except for one of those numbers that indicates it's in a different building. I think so. It's going to be a much better system as far as its organization, and of course the features are really going to work well. So we're finalizing some of those types of things. ANIS will be on site over the next few weeks to further install and program more gear. But at this time, because we're so close to the beginning of school, we're not going to open school with that system. So we'll be planning for a cutover about the third week of September or the end of September, because we do have a lot of training to do. And unfortunately, we've missed that ideal period of the summer to finalize installation and plan the PD for staff. But it's okay. That happens a lot when you're programming district-wide systems. So the real next steps will be to finalize the diet plan per our specifications. The gear will get programmed in that manner. We're still waiting. Also, some of the items that were backlogged, about 20% of the classroom phones have not been received. So that's the other piece that we're waiting for. After that, as we get closer to cutover, we will be placing those phones in classrooms. We'll have our cutover with the training dates very close to that. So we've moved into September for implementation.
Anybody have any questions about where we are with that? So really the big holdup was some back order on some equipment from Cisco.
Yeah.
And that just put things off. So rather than push to get something in the first or second week in September, which is a very, very horrible time for us to make any change like that, it really pushes it out to the second or third week. So. I had given the board an enrollment report. We've been watching it every few days in the month of August, really just to see where there are any trends. And one that is not easily read through in the report there is second grade and our special education numbers. So Rose and I are consulting closely and watching how the wind goes every single day with our numbers. But just want to put on the board's radar that we are a little bit concerned about our numbers there, and we'll be discussing that a little bit further with you in the coming days, depending upon how enrollments go this last week. But the overall enrollment for the grade is not bad. I mean, it's a good enrollment, but the mix of special ed to general ed really broke in a way that we didn't anticipate. So we have some decisions that we need to make and see where we can reshuffle in our current deck or whether we have to add to our deck. So,
But that's just within special ed.
that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the
'Cause
actual
the other number was real low.
Exactly. The number as a grade level is the average for the grade level. Second grade is 136 students, which is an average class size of 22.7. I mean, it's respectable. It's just that mix of general to special ed broke in a way that we didn't anticipate. But we're studying that now and doing our due diligence before we are prepared to make any recommendation to you folks. So I just want to put it on your radar. Additionally, we had spoken in June and in the July meeting that there's some crazy updates to the way we're calculating the school year, and we had adopted our calendar back in winter for the 18-19 school year. Regulations were then put in place after that. So as recently as today, Robin and I were doing some calculating on how that's put together. Ironically, it's actually a better way to do it. It's just difficult to transition like this when you've already adopted a calendar. Our school district actually has a very favorable instructional day when it comes to minutes. We've got a lot of minutes built into our instructional day. And one of the Board of Regents explained it to me that while the old system counted days, so you had to do 180 days minimum, the system counts minutes and hours. That rewards districts that have a long instructional day, because the variety of districts within the state and the length of their instructional day was vast. You could have one district that has 6 or 6.5 hours of instructional time a day and another district that has 5 hours of instruction a day, and they both in the old system counted as a day. So that allows some flexibility as far as how we calculate out the 180 days. That also then changes how we look at it from professional development days, superintendent's conference days, half days, parent conference days, and certainly also snow delays and 2-hour delays. Long explanation. I think we're now ready to ask for one amendment to the student calendar at the next meeting, which would be adding a superintendent's conference day in March. Right now we've got 2 scheduled superintendent's conference days. The first one is Tuesday, September 4th, the staff development day, and then the second one is in November for a staff development day. We held off on doing anything for the spring until we saw how this regulation was going to play in, and I'm comfortable to make that recommendation, if the board is comfortable with it, at the next meeting to amend the student calendar to include a superintendent's conference day, full day off for students, full day on for staff members in March.
Yeah, the only thing I would ask is that you bring forth a specific reason why we're going to cut a day of instruction for the students. If we had that plan that we can get by with 2, is the PD really necessary, you know, when we're talking about trying to get more and get ready for testing, you know, especially at the high school level and stuff, you know, meeting all of those goals, are we gonna meet those or not?
Absolutely, we'll do, we'll
Yeah.
have something in writing for you.
And furthermore, is it conducive, I mean, is there a reason that you would be looking at March versus that of, say, the day of the vote? So,
Great question. My short answer on that is really, when we get into May, that's a bit too late to have that type of experience, especially for the secondary grades. But we'll spend some time kind of vetting through that piece of it. We looked at March as a sweet spot, kind of towards the end of winter, so you have to worry less about cancellations. It still can happen, because usually when you have a staff development day, there's a lot of effort that goes into scheduling people. Outside people coming in, inside people working around, a lot of money contracts, things like that. So getting a cancellation is expensive too. So, but we'll work on that to make sure that we're prepared to give you the information you're looking for.
You'll obviously give us more at the next meeting, but simple question. The net of the results of the new regulation means, compared to our existing calendar, we have not enough instructional time, or
Well more than enough.
more
Yep.
than enough?
Well, and that, we can get through some of the
Yeah.
numbers. Actually, we'll provide that in the memo for you, so you can understand how many instructional hours we're required to do, how many we're going to do, with or without this superintendent's conference day. Even with this superintendent's conference day, by the way, that does count as instructional hours, but kids aren't in school. But we're still well above the minimum requirement for secondary and elementary. It's two different numbers, by the way, for secondary and elementary.
Yes, because you closed part of the district, not the other. Stupid.
Anyway, great questions, and we'll be prepared for that before we make the recommendation, or when we make the recommendation. And the last one, I know that there's a lot of interest, certainly there's interest internally regarding our test scores and our student assessments. And as a matter of fact, we just got a notice today that we should be getting some 3.8 scores relatively soon, with an extended embargo period, the memo said. So normally they're embargoed for a few days. We believe they're probably going to be embargoed for most of September, or a substantial portion of September, which means we can use the numbers internally, but we cannot share them publicly. This is something that was kind of spoken about last winter, but became real this summer when we were notified that you're not going to get any scores until we get into September. We did get some, but by now we should already have in our hands real information. We won't open school with real information regarding our student performance on the tests last spring and in June. So, disappointing, but reality, I guess. So, and with that, I have nothing else to report.
Okay. Public comment on the agenda. If anybody has any comments on the agenda items, please approach the podium, give your name and where you're from. Okay, we're going to move on to consent agenda, but we first have to do an amendment to the consent agenda. The superintendent had circulated out. We want to add, they finalized the one. Can I get a motion to amend the agenda? Susan, second. Russell, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion.
John Cantone, second. Russell, discussion, consent agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to just make a point about the donation from, or not donation, it's under donations, but the grant from IBM. I just want to explain a little bit about it, because the letter that went out to the school basically showed it as my name only, and the hours that I have put towards, volunteer hours towards the various programs that IBM does for STEM across this district and others. But I want to expand on that a little bit, because there's really a much broader team than just myself who's involved in this. As most of you know, the Discover Engineering visits that we do are a large group of people that come at different times, different schools. And the way the grant program worked is you have to accumulate a certain number of hours, 200 plus, across a team of IBM employees. And if you get past that number, you can apply for the grant, and if you get it, you can get up to $2,000. But my team that I use is primarily both IBM and Global Foundries employees. Global Foundries is the company that bought IBM's chip manufacturing business, including Fishkill. And although they're partnering with us to continue to do these visits, when you apply for the grant, I can't count their hours. So we had plenty of hours as a team to submit it as a team grant request, but I couldn't use theirs. So the alternative was to use my own hours, and I was able to go all the way back to 2017. So I was able to get enough hours to get the grant to be eligible and win it as well. So there's a lot of folks that really weren't mentioned that I want to make mention of that contributed to our ability to win that. If I may, so there's Sebastian Lacerbo and Clayton Menzer, both Global Foundries employees who still have children in the district. There's Tom McCoy and Jake Mazza, who are actually graduates of Marlboro High School that work for both Global Foundries and IBM. Don't have children in the district, but they come back every year. And then several others who were not really part of the district at all. Andy Schwager, Antonio Mazzarelli, Tanya Buchanan, who also happens to be the coordinator for Highland, and her and I started working together last year to coordinate resources to help each other. David Yanity and Joanna Garcia Morales. And then lastly, Barbara Montalbano, who's also a parent of a child in the district who doesn't work at Global Foundries or IBM at all. She works for a separate mechanical engineering consulting firm, but she worked with me and helped me on the what do you call it, the middle school day, the career day. I'm drawing a blank.
Power Up Night?
Power Up Night, sorry, thank you. So she came for that and helped me with that. So her company didn't even want her to use the name of her company, but she came anyway and we did it. So I wanted to make sure all of these folks get mentioned and thanks, because if it wasn't for all of them coming in, I wouldn't have accumulated the hours either. And it's a big effort, and this is the first time we were able to actually get help to make the grant request and be successful. And many thanks to Mike and Robin for being very, very responsive when I needed some information to make it meet the deadline. So everybody kind of contributed, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
Any other comments on the consent items? Cast your votes.
Well, thank you very much, Board of Education. We just appointed some of our new staff members. 3 of them couldn't be here tonight. One, because we slipped her in to the agenda tonight. Thank you very much for the agenda adjustment there. But one we have here tonight, and we have our new art teacher, Rachel Elder is with us. So, Rachel, I'd like to talk a little bit about you, if you don't mind. You don't have a choice anyway. Rachel comes to us from Hyde Park. She has a certification in visual arts. She did her undergraduate work at the College of St. Rose, and she has a BA in studio art from there. And she also did her graduate work at New York University and has her master's in art education. And she will be an art teacher with our team in the district, but assigned at the high school. So, Rachel, welcome to Marlboro. We also appointed tonight Caitlin Cirali, who's going to be a leave replacement for our literacy teacher at the elementary school. And she has an elementary birth through 6 certification and a literacy birth through 6 certification, both from SUNY New Paltz for her bachelor's and her master's. We also appointed tonight a new social worker, replacing a social worker at the elementary school, Amanda Del Orletta. She has her undergraduate degree from SUNY Brockport in bachelor's from in social work and health sciences, and her graduate degree from Fordham University, master's in social work. And Rachel Sear is going to be our new English as a second language teacher. She has her undergraduate degree from Rutgers University with a bachelor's in English, and from Minnesota State University, she has her master's in experiential education. So I welcome all of them to our fine school district. Marlboro's better off for you because of it. And as I said to them, as we finished out each of their interviews, I expect them all to do the right thing for our children each and every single day. And I know that they will. So, Thank you.
Okay. Recommended actions, tax resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, acknowledges the receipt of the 2018-19 tax resolution as presented. Can I get a motion for the tax? Russell, second. John? Second. John Cantone? Number 5. Discussion?
Just a question. Did any of these vary from where we were or where we expected to be at the end of the budget vote? In any significance?
Pull that information up.
I mean, in any significance, not...
Pat's not here due to an illness, but, I mean, he did give me a big prep for tonight, except for that. So I anticipated you were going to ask about rates, so we put together the comparative rates from last year to this year, and certainly the tax documents. But I don't remember where he had projected, although I believe the town of Newburgh, I don't want to speculate.
Okay.
I don't remember where they were when we did the anticipated rates back in the spring.
Yeah, I meant
But we
to-
can find that information for you.
Yeah,
someday.
so the big thing for the public is the new rate for Marlboro and Plattekill this year is 27.75782, which is a 2.37% increase over last year. Last year was 27.1145. Built into that rate is the change that that's not all the increase because of the budget. That's the increase because we actually all got a cut last year that we weren't supposed to because of Town of Newburgh's error in their assessment of the power plant. And for the Town of Newburgh, it's a 3.7% increase. They're going to be at 81.64063 compared to 78.72968. And remember, they're not at 100%. If I remember correctly, it's this year, the equalization was what? Was it 32 or? I don't remember. I don't recall the number. Yeah. The equalization rate, they're nowhere near 100%, so they're, that's where that's at.
A piece that we're anxiously awaiting, and certainly the auditors have been working, have completed some pieces, but finalized things come this fall, and then that prepares Pat for his winter 5-year projection. One of the things that we anxiously anticipate and look at very, very closely is the expected deficit. So if you recall, we had talked about a number we were projecting that we would need to pull out of the bank. And certainly our work last year was to try to minimize that as much as possible. Pat projected it at a certain level. Now we're anticipating where will that be in actuality, and we're hoping that it's favorable. That's the anticipation right now, is that it's favorable compared to what we expected it to be. So while the percentages are important, the actual dollar amounts is what we're looking for, because that impacts our long-term financial picture. So all of our effort was focused on getting that to be a more favorable number through our efforts of squeezing the buffalo off the nickel. I mean, that's the best way to phrase it.
Any other discussion? Okay, cast your votes. Old business. Do we have any old business? Okay. New business. Anybody have any new items? Any other items?
I have some things I would like to briefly discuss. On July 24th, I attended the Summer Law Conference in Latham at NISBA, and as you would imagine, it's just amazing to me. I mean, how do you even keep up? You know, I mean, even from a parent perspective regarding technology, to even educate your kid, and that's just even a small piece of it. But anyway.
I don't have time for pleasure reading.
Yeah, apparently. So if I could just highlight some of the topics for the board. The first one was on the walkout that the majority of schools throughout the country participated in. They just really discussed the importance of making sure that our code of conduct applies to protests at schools, sponsored events, such as athletic events, and that when we agree with students today, we have to make sure that we are doing so tomorrow and treating these types of events that are taking place, such as walkouts, with a balanced approach. Not that we would agree with one and then not agree with another and decide against it. So that was just a highlight there.
I believe that the attorneys will say we cannot be arbitrary and capricious.
Yes, there
in
you go.
Making decisions regarding that.
Nice terminology.
Right, Mr. Jackson?
I'll stick with the layman's terms. How's that? The next one I wanted to highlight was the training requirements, even for our contracted bus drivers. I mean, there's a lot here, but there's just some that just kind of stuck out. Currently, that list has, the educational setting, I guess, really has been expanded. So the expanded list of employees are now required to report, and that includes PTs, OTs, speech language pathologists, teachers, bus drivers, etc. And also, too, regarding bus drivers, it was interesting that they expanded the hours regarding the consumption of drugs and alcohol from 6 hours to 8 hours. So just a little FYI regarding our contracts. Executive session, this one I found interesting. Says that recently Lucas versus East Ramapo Central School District, there was a motion made and passed permitting the board to convene into executive session to discuss litigation, personnel, real estate, and contracts. And I learned that we have to be very specific in describing in detail why we are entering into executive session, and that blurb that we normally do actually is a violation, so we need to update ourselves on that.
Right. A great example is you can't say we're going into executive session for personnel matters.
Yes.
So the language we use is the employment history of particular persons. So
Yeah.
that's the language that comes out of...
Yep. Also, too, regarding there was a bullying verdict in Sullivan County. They found the district turned a blind eye to severe bullying against a student, and the negligent supervision caused an action against the school district, more than $1 million, I believe, in damages. So it's something that we, of course, need to remain aware of. Another interesting note was on the prevention of all types of not only bullying but sexual harassment, including grooming behavior. Be alert for signs of possible grooming behavior by teachers or other employees towards students, overly familiar relationships with a student, excessive interaction with a student, excessive one-to-one time with students on school grounds. Direct staff to use only district-established channels of communication with students, no personal texts or personal email, no friending on social media, just to make sure our policies are up to date regarding that. And then also, too, along that line, they spoke about retaliation in a very long session on that, but that the district is obligated to prevent retaliation against anyone who has made a complaint or participated in an investigation. And also, too, all investigations have to be filed. It does not matter if the investigation was unfounded. It is not to be discarded, but to be kept so that if there's a change in administration, that information is there. And I have a whole entire book of new law that needs to go into effect, certain parts of it with the S, I believe, by September 1st. If the board is interested in learning that, I have a...
Scan it and share it.
Yeah, I also have a link that I can send to everybody, but I just figured I would.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's hard to keep up.
So Sue, is there a net of this that means there's some work we have to do, whether it's review of policies or?
Well, I think the most important thing that the board always has to do is to make sure that our policies are up to date. I mean, that, you know, just with the amount of change that happens all of the time, I mean, that's really our most important job, is to make sure that those policies are up to date.
So what you know about the policies or anything else that was covered in all the topics you mentioned, anything blaring that we should jump on right away, or, I mean, what you?
Well, I think the certain aspects of things that have been expanded, added to, we just have to, the policy committee has to go back, review the language, and to make sure that our language is up to date.
Yeah, and then the upside is we do subscribe to the service, so the attorneys and the service company will send out, as each one of these come out, they send out those updates that it flags them, so you make sure that we get them, so we don't miss them.
Correct. Teresa and I receive those as often as they come in, and then just look at the language that we already have compared to what the recommended language is, and then if there's any changes that are suggested, if they need to be run by our attorneys, we do that, and then we put it to the policy committee. So,
Oh,
but there is
also-
a process built in for that. So.
Okay.
Also, too, this was an interesting, because I know that our free and reduced lunches, do we know the percentage of that?
For the new school year?
Yeah.
No, that won't be finalized until we get into the fall. That won't be finalized until we get into the fall, but I don't anticipate it.
It just said that there's now, this breakfast after the bell, a school district with 70% or more of its students eligible for free or reduced priced meals under the federal national school lunch program must offer all students a school breakfast after the instructional day begins, and time spent eating may count as instructional time.
Yeah, that actually goes to the regulation regarding calculation of hours for
Yeah.
the school year, yeah. We don't have 70%, but
Yeah, and then also what was new, I forgot this, this whole education law on meal shaming, that you can't talk to students in front of anyone,
Right, I
et
think that
cetera.
we covered that was in that last update we did to make sure,
It
we
was.
changed some wording in that last one.
it was correct, and also the way that they use the terminals at the cafeterias allows for free and reduced to be built into the terminal, so not just students that have an account, so to speak, punch a number, everybody punches a number, even if you're not drawing off the accounts, so nobody knows, are you free or are you paying?
Yeah.
So everybody punches a number.
And also too, the public health law, which now requires all elementary and secondary schools serving children's grades 6 through 12 to provide feminine hygiene products in the restrooms. So I guess that's expanded.
Yeah, it was a huge, who was it? There was a huge article in the NISBA sent out, Yonkers.
Yeah.
With the hundreds of thousands of dollars it's gonna cost them to do dispensers and not knowing usage and.
Thank you.
Any other items? Okay, recognition of district residents. Mark.
I just had a couple of questions I wanted to follow up on. In terms of the bus change over, and is all that gone? Is that finished now and smooth now with the new company that took over? And is that all ready to go?
Yes, all ready to go.
And I think they were going to add some equipment in some of the buses, is that right?
That's part of their plan over the coming weeks and months to make some adjustments to the safety equipment.
Okay.
So, yeah, what they presented back in June is being worked on. I don't know the specific item that you're asking about, but
Right. But in the next month or two, that you think that stuff will be added and complete in terms of some of the extra equipment and?
I don't know the timeline, but when we have Pat here, or if you have, maybe we can look back to the presentation and ask specific questions. I mean,
Okay.
there was a lot.
Yeah, there
They had
was.
a
There
lot,
was.
so I don't know how far they are down their list.
Okay. The other question I had, when you talked about the extended period of time on the test scores being held?
Correct.
Did they offer a reason?
It's taking them longer to aggregate the scores. That's really the nut and bolt of the page-and-a-half memo that we got.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to speculate why. I mean, that doesn't seem to be, on my soapbox, we give them the scores in May, complete. So the tests are scored and reported in electronic form in May.
Okay,
For the life of me, I don't understand why we don't have them back in our hands by June.
right.
So why it goes into September as opposed to August when we were normally getting them, I can't even begin to fathom the reason why.
Okay.
It makes
Off
no
of his
logical
question,
sense.
off of his question, though, what does the embargo have to do with that?
Each time there's an embargo. So internally, we get the scores reported to us so that we can look through them to see if there's any glaring errors. And that's an embargo period. But usually it's no more than a week. So they're extending that because they know that we need some numbers before the school year opens up, but we're not allowed to publicly discuss those numbers. We can only use them internally as it relates to student placements and things like that.
But are you allowed to turn around and like say, oh no, I disagree, there's something wrong with your numbers?
Correct.
Is that what that period's for?
Well, normally, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, we've already signed off on them, we've already vetted them when we do the
submitted them.
process and submission, and we certify those scores, but that embargo period is usually for us to see, once they put them out publicly.
Did they do something to
Is
your
there
numbers
anything
that they-
glaring that's off?
That they messed up when they
Right.
took your numbers and
Correct,
did whatever they do to them?
correct. Right, or some outrageously wrong numbers, so.
Sorry, Mark.
No problem. I have one last question. Today, the New York Times reported that the Secretary of Education is considering a plan to allow teachers to be armed and using money from academic programs and student services programs. I wonder if that's something that you guys have spoken about, or is it something that you might consider or not consider?
I didn't hear that proposal today. I'm interested in hearing about it because everything that the Federal Department of Education does affects us. We have not discussed that specific item as far as arming teachers because right now in New York State that would be illegal. So how that impacts certainly is something that we would watch and see.
The plan appears to be that the Education Department would let the states access that money and use it for that purpose. Each state would have that decision.
Interesting, yeah. I don't know anything about it and it has not been, since it's so fresh, on our radar.
Right.
That seems like a pretty general, I mean, it's not like you're arming, I'm assuming it's for those that have a permit to carry, that can carry.
It didn't sound that way. It
It's gonna
sounded
arm
like,
anybody with a rifle or?
and there would be training and
Who
what
knows?
they're talking
Well,
about.
and in some states, that's probably easier than others. It's like everything else. It's, New York's got all kinds of regulations, so even if the state said you could do it, you could still have to comply with all the state regulations.
Right.
So it'd definitely be interesting. I didn't see that either yet today.
Yeah, it'd be an
Okay.
interesting debate around the state, I imagine.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on anything? Okay, we do have an executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person, proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, and proposed pending or current litigation. And we may have action afterwards. Motion to adjourn to executive session. Russell, second. Susan, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?